Coming up on Tech News today, why Apple was able to get HTC phones seized at the border. Also, Google's answer to Bing's social search and the Pirate Bay under attack. But not from pirates. At least we don't think so. We'll tell you next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, May 16th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle, the easy way to sell your iPhone, iPad, iPod, or Android smartphone from your home or office so you can get the latest version. Get a risk-free quote that's good for 30 days at Gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And we're very happy to have back on the show the U.S. technology correspondent from The Economist and oft-times host of the Babbage podcast, Mr. Martin Giles. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you along to talk about some tech news. And we got some interesting stuff today. HTC One X and Evo 4G LTE supposed to launch in 2 days, but they're sitting in a customs warehouse right now, indefinitely delayed, thanks to an Apple patent infringement case. Apple won a wide-ranging exclusion order banning the importation of HTC Android phones by the International Trade Commission back in December. ITC found that Android's messaging app and browser infringed on Apple patent 5946647, which is that one where a telephone number comes up and then you can tap it and it'll make a call. The ban was delayed until April 19th because HTC wanted some time to be able to work around the patent. It turns out that instead of getting rid of that functionality, they actually kept the functionality but say they are not violating the patent with the way they're implementing it. Well, Customs and Border Enforcement, which has the latitude to enforce these things any way they wish, has decided that they want to look into this. So they have indefinitely delayed all HTC One X and Evo 4Gs and put them in a warehouse. And because their orders are completely classified and even a FOIA request can't get to them, we don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, HTC said they're trying to fix the problem, and they're trying to work with customers to make this come through. But the thing is, I know people will go, patent wars, and this is ruining everything, but the patent that HTC was running into, again, has a defined method. And HTC probably has a workaround that this is their main line. This is One X and the Evo 4G. This is their hero phones or their flagship phones these days. So it's likely they have an adequate workaround. But, I mean, it's the duty of the enforcement agency to take a look at this and make sure it's proper.
What about all the customers who pre-ordered phones? How mad would you be right now? We've gotten some notes from people who are like, I thought I was going to get a new phone in a couple of days. This is awful. I'm the one who loses here.
Absolutely. Well, HTC is going to lose, too. Their shares are already taking a hit. Martin, you've been following this story. This is pretty unusual, isn't it, for phones actually to get seized?
I'm stunned by this because, HTC has had plenty of warning, and you would think that they and their lawyers would have been able to sort of sort this out. And the company, its revenues were down, I think something like 45% in the first 2 months of this year. And they were really counting on these new phones to make a big splash, particularly here in the States, but also in other markets too. So it's really surprising that they've sort of hit this roadblock right now.
Yeah, I think it may have been unclear communication on HTC's part. I'm not exactly sure, but it seems like they should have been able to make customs aware of what they had done to work around the patent without requiring them to seize every single copy of the phone. Now, T-Mobile has a 1S phone, which got in before the April 19th date. And those are not being seized. Those are available. So T-Mobile kind of skated under the wire here, but Sprint and AT&T are not going to get their phones on time. I mean, I just don't see how they could make it in time for a May 18th launch.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems strange that you can get a version of this elsewhere. It looks like the Customs and Border Enforcement decided to go, okay, we're not going to bother with that shipment, but we are going to with this one, just to be sure. It seems like, I don't want to say it was random.
Well, the 1S probably got shipped in before the deadline, at which point they're like, okay, it's before April 19th. We don't have to stop those. And once they're already in, they're already on the shelves. Google has got their answer to Bing, the Google Knowledge Graph. Starting today, English language users who are signed in, and eventually all English language users, will start seeing a new little summary box on the right side of your Google search queries with key information. Google says they have a database of 500 million people, places, and things, and 3.5 billion attributes that will trigger the results that show up in that box. They've crawled hundreds of what they call broad fact sources, things like Wikipedia, the CIA fact book. And one of the things this will do is disambiguation. So if you search Andromeda, do you mean the television show? Do you mean the galaxy? Or do you mean the Swedish metal band? Iyaz?
Which one do I mean? I mean the galaxy. I don't.
Obviously.
Well, but if you were just to search that word, you'd get a variety of results of all three things.
Right.
And you'd kind of have to pick and choose, okay, what am I talking about? And which one is maybe the Swedish band, which was what I was referring to, doesn't end up being the first three search results. So this is supposed to take into account that you might have been searching for a few things that are known terms that they could suggest to you.
And then once you click on that, it will actually give you results just for the Swedish metal band or just for the television
I'm sure certain websites are freaking out immediately, kind of like the Google News approach, where you're scraping our data and then no one will click our stuff and no one's going to read our material because they're just going to see it on the front page of Google.
We haven't seen anybody freak out. Well, thankfully, Wikipedia actually licensed it exactly for this purpose, but that's a possibility.
And Google was proactively saying in their blog post.
I think what you're talking about is something we haven't got to yet, though, which is the summary boxes of a search topic. So if I search for Taj Mahal, it will actually give me all the vital statistics of the Taj Mahal. If I search for a person, it'll give me their birth date and things about them. And that's where, I don't know, the CIA fact book is also a public source, and maybe Google has only gone after sources that are okay with this. But that's where somebody like the Encyclopedia Britannica could get upset and say, you know what, you're taking our information and displaying it without clicking on it.
Yeah, thanks. I was jumping the point there. But Google's proactively said that, look, what we have found is that people will click through to these sites because they want more data. They're getting the actual data that they want. They figured out they got the right thing with the Taj Mahal. They wanted to go to the music band. They wanted to find out more about that, and they're more likely to keep clicking through and through and through. So Google being like the first splash page for you would actually promote things. So obviously, Google has a lot of experience with this, with the whole Google News mess.
Related facts in the box are clickable, too, so they're hoping people will kind of get sucked in and keep clicking through on different topics, keep learning, drilling down, and eventually, that's what Giles was saying, Google says it will lead you to the source of the information because you'll want even deeper than you can get in this box, but you'll be drawn in by all of this information. Jack Manzel, Product Management Director of Search at Google, was quick to say this is not semantic search because that's a big buzzword. Everybody wants to go, okay, so you're doing semantic search. He's like, no, we want to do semantic search. We do continue to work on how to make search semantic, but talking about it brings out the crazy people. That's a direct quote from him. So he's like, no, this is a different kind of structured data.
I actually think that within the Wikipedia experience, this happens to me all the time where I'll search for something and then there are enough related topics, or I search for something that's a little too broad where Wikipedia is like, well, I have several different articles. Just depends on which Taj Mahal you're talking about, for example. And I end up reading a lot more than I initially thought I was going to, learning all sorts of stuff. So this as a Google experience on the surface is great. It only helps me.
Martin, something that sounds interesting to you now that
I mean, you can see how it fits into the broader push that Google's got on of trying to sort of learn far more about all of us. You know, what it's doing with Google Plus, and then all the fuss that there has been across all of the services where it's trying to pull our information together. But, actually it can be an example of something that's extremely useful to the user. So I think, that you're going to see a lot more of this, and not just by Google.
And I think this is an interesting tactic to say, what we're good at Google is taking that huge, big chunk of information that we've spidered and organizing it for people, whereas Bing is saying, you know what, well, we've got good relationship with Twitter and Facebook, so our big thing is going to be using your friends to recommend things. Two different takes on search, and I think that's great. It's good to have competition. I like to be able to go to one or the other. Now I actually have a way to separate whether I would use Bing or Google, which I don't think I had a clear idea really why I would want to use one over the other in the past. Onward to the rumor mill.
Well, guess what the rumor mill's full of today? Apple rumors. I mean, I know that never happens. It's very rare, but we're going to talk about it this time. Wall Street Journal is reporting the next iPhone will have at least a 4-inch display diagonally. Reuters sources also say about the same thing. It's going to have a larger screen. They also mentioned a 4-inch diagonal. They didn't say at least 4, so it's going to be 4 or larger, it looks like. The displays would be from companies like LG, Sharp, and Japan Display, which is actually a conglomeration of Sony, Hitachi, and Toshiba's LCD business. Now, there's no specific mention of Samsung in the display side, which they make the iPad screen. I believe they've made parts for the iPhone as well. Production would begin next month. And, of course, the iPhone's had that 3.5-inch display since 2007. So it's been a long time.
Now, their sources are in the supply chain, right? That's why they're saying this is happening, because they say these companies that are making the panels are telling us we're making the panels for the iPhone.
I believe so. And then there's Digitimes, who always has great relationships with supply chain people. So they're reporting that the 7.85-inch iPad is launching the fourth quarter. You know, the one that's not announced.
The mini iPad.
Right, the one, or the really big iPod.
The long-rumored, smaller iPad.
The non-existent, whatever the hell this product is. But anyway, it's going to be thinner than the current iPad because it's going to use a new technology called G/F2 thin film touch technology, which the G stands for glass and F is film. The current iPad uses glass, film. And so this would actually give you one less layer and theoretically would make it a lot, they said, more transparent. So I'm assuming that there's more light that's going to be able to go through the screen. So it doesn't have to have such a large battery to power that display.
I guess it wouldn't really make it too much lighter because film wouldn't be contributing to the overall weight of it.
If it stopped the transparency, then you need a larger battery to make a bigger backlight to make that thing come through.
That's true.
There, I would think that's where the savings would be in the physical design. But that's supposed to be the fourth quarter. So either we're going to get a new iPhone with a larger display and a smaller display iPad.
It's interesting when you read. We've pretty much gotten to the point now where people. I think I read a headline which was like, Apple has to increase the size of the iPhone. They are forced to. It is the industry standard. They'd be crazy not to. I don't think Apple gives a crap what everybody else is doing. I don't think they ever have. And I don't think that just because there are a lot of Android phones that look really nice, that are bigger, that people like, it means that the 3.5-inch diagonal iPhone is now too small. There are a lot of iPhone users who choose to use the iPhone. And if it was too small, then maybe they'd feel differently. However, I think that all signs point to this happening. Not because they really care what anybody else is doing, but because they can increase their resolution without having to screw over developers too much.
Martin,
or having to resize their apps.
If you had to guess, what do you think?
Well, if I had a euro for every time somebody's put out one of these rumors, I'd be richer than Greece, but that's not very hard at the moment.
I was going to say, you'd be in debt.
Nevertheless, I do think that there might be something to it this time round. You know, I've heard a number of different sources say that, you know, that they are pushing something larger through the supply chain. And, you know, there's been a lot of speculation that mobile advertising would benefit from slightly larger screens than are out there at the moment. And, you know, we all know that trying to crack the mobile advertising conundrum is the big sort of holy grail that's out there for companies like Apple. So just slightly bigger screens, maybe I could see it coming this time round.
And I think Sarah's right. It's not because Android is doing anything that Apple would make a bigger screen. It's because they see the same advantages that Android has seen in having a bigger screen and what you can do with it. And those are great examples of why they might want to have that bigger screen anyway, whether anybody else is doing it or not. Well, all this means that you may want to pay attention to our sponsor today. Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle.com, which means, you know what? If you're going to get that new phone, whether it's an Android phone or an iPhone or whatever it is, or maybe a new tablet, you're going to need to come up with some cash. And one source of that cash is your old iPhone, your old iPad, your iPod, your Mac, any smartphone. Go to Gazelle, get some cash, and trade up. You can get a risk-free quote that's good for 30 days. I do it all the time whenever I'm getting close. In fact, this last time I timed it perfectly because what Gazelle does is they lock in your quote for 30 days. So I went early, I got my iPad quote, and then I held on until I got my new iPad, and then I sent them the old iPad. So don't wait. Get over there because the gadgets don't get more valuable over time. Put in the specs, put in the condition, put in what kind of wires, any of the accessories that you have, and then get that quote locked in. In fact, if the value does go up for some reason, they'll upgrade it for you. That's not likely to happen, though. So you might want to get over there and try it right now. They'll pay you by PayPal. They'll pay you by Amazon. In fact, you get 5% more if you use an Amazon gift certificate. And you'll get, once they get your gadget and they verify its condition, you'll get your payment really quickly. So check them out. Visit Gazelle.com for your risk-free quote today. Do it now. We got more tech news for you today, and it's Facebook again, because it's pretty much Facebook IPO week, right?
Happy Facebook IPO week, everybody. And they just can't leave well enough alone. They have to amend their S1 registration statement with the SEC as of this morning. They're actually going to be offering more Class A common stock than they were originally offering, which raises the IPO number of shares that will be available by almost 25%. So here's the deal. Facebook is now offering 421.2 million shares of Class A stock in the impending Friday IPO. The increased amount of shares will allow for something called over-allotment from 50.6 million to 63.2 million, bringing the grand total to 484.4 million shares when it goes public. So what does that over-allotment mean? Well, Facebook is only offering 180 million of that 484 million shares of common stock in the IPO. Where's the rest of it going? Stockholders who already have basically share options are now allowed to sell more. It's called a green shoe. It's the number of shares that underwriters can sell if the Facebook deal, the IPO deal, is seen as oversubscribed. Basically, there are going to be a lot of people like us out there who really, really want shares.
So is there a limit on what they could sell before, and that limit has been raised?
Exactly.
Okay.
That limit, the number of shares that they can sell. The amount of shares hasn't changed at all. It's the amount of shares that can go out into the grand pool of Facebook IPO stock. So you can read that as a lot of people who are insiders in this whole deal are about to make a lot more money on this IPO, which is going to be pretty big. Obviously, we mentioned yesterday that Facebook had upped its IPO price range from a high of 34 to now a high of around 38. So, for example, venture capital firm Excel Partners has increased its number of shares being sold in the IPO from 38.9 million to 49 million. They were about to make a lot of money. Now they're about to make a lot more. I know that kind of, we talk about stuff like this, but that's what's going on behind the scenes. Martin, what do you make of all this? Is this sort of par for the course?
It's an incredible development in my view. I mean, you've seen a lot of discussion around the Facebook advertising model and questions raised about it. I mean, yesterday, General Motors said that it wasn't going to be advertising on Facebook in future. So there's a lot of doubt swirling, and yet you see all of this sort of appetite among institutional investors to get their hands on Facebook shares, and that's obviously giving insiders a great opportunity to get out now. Now, they're not selling all of their stock. And it's interesting that Mark Zuckerberg, he of the Hoodie, isn't going to be selling any more shares into the offering of his own holdings. But you've got to question exactly what's going on here. I mean, why get out now when Facebook supposedly has this amazing opportunity to grow?
Yeah, well, and they must be pretty confident to allow people to sell more of these shares, because you would think that would have the effect of driving down the price, but they're raising the IPO price. So they must feel pretty confident, even with General Motors deciding to stop Facebook ads. We mentioned it briefly yesterday. That's a pretty big deal for Facebook.
Yeah, well, and it has a lot of people talking, too. By the way, General Motors' decision to say, we're off of Facebook, if you put it into context, Wall Street Journal threw out some numbers. General Motors, besides making a Facebook page, which doesn't cost anybody anything, spent about $10 million last year in Facebook ads. You think, well, $10 million is a lot of money, but that's out of over $1 billion that they spent in the U.S. alone on ads in general. So it's a small portion of the kind of money that they are throwing around at ads, and they've obviously decided that it's not worth their $10 million. Has a lot of people talking, though. What does this mean? Is this kind of scary for the future of Facebook? The product leader of Google's European display ad business, Jason Bigler, weighed in today via Twitter, as they do. Quote, seriously, folks, did you really expect consumers to be transactional mindsets on Facebook? So he's thinking that's just not the way it's going to work.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? I mean, if you work for Google, naturally. But I do think that there is something going on here, and that is that you have a company like GM, and I appreciate it's only a small amount of money, $10 million, but nevertheless, this is America's third biggest advertiser. And what it does is, of course, it goes on, it pumps out a few ads, and then it gets people to sign up as fans of its Facebook page. And then all it does is just content on that page, which it pays nothing for. Very, very smart. If you ask me, you access Facebook's audience, but you don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars driving to your page. They're already there. They're coming. Now, if many other companies follow that example, Facebook does have a bit of an issue. It's a bit of a free rider problem over time.
Yeah, it's not like you can start a television program. You have to buy television ads if you're GM. But with Facebook, you can capture an audience with the ads. Yeah, it's very clever. Now, Google obviously is trying to set it up as Facebook is a place where people go and consume, and that's not a great place to sell, whereas Google is a place where they go to shop. But there's a new, not a new website, but a newer website called Fab.com, which is an up-and-comer in e-commerce that is using Facebook to great effect to exactly take people in that transactional mindset and sell them stuff.
Yeah, it's true. Fab.com was one of the first. It's an e-commerce site, really. It's a curated list of goods and services, but basically a place where you can buy things for your home. Little medicine balls or jewelry or all sorts of stuff. But it is curated by the Fab team. They were one of the first services to roll out action links. So that goes beyond, I like something on Facebook, to I'm going to fave something on Facebook. So they had a deal with Facebook to have a personalized action item, basically, on anything that you were seeing that was coming into your newsfeed from your friends who were using Fab. Now they have added a filter that adds a live feed of what your Facebook friends are doing. So if I've got my Fab live feed up here on my computer, I'll go ahead and refresh so I can see.
Are you going to embarrass someone with what they just bought?
Well, hey, it's their own fault. No, I'm just kidding. My friend Ryan bought a lobster T-shirt. Okay, well, that's kind of fine. His wife's from Maine, so there's something to do with it. Jeff Clavier looked like he faved some really nice wine. My friend Jeanette liked the sleeve. So I get the idea. It's like, okay, I'm connected via Facebook to Fab, and here's what my friends are liking in real time. Now, I'm looking just at my Facebook friends, but I could choose to look at everybody on Fab.
And the idea, too, is that this shows up in your Facebook feed as well and draws people over to Fab.
You might say, well, I'm not using Fab, so what does it matter that they have some sort of a live feed? Well, if I switch over to my Facebook feed and I go to my, let's load my profile here. I just so happened, sorry, it's taking a long time. I just so happened to see a pair of shoes that somebody else had liked earlier today.
Lovely.
That's a picture of Eileen's last
my wife
day.
downing bourbon. That's
the
lovely.
cap was on. She was kidding. But over here on the right, just to the right of Eileen's whiskey head, we've got Sarah bought Inca boots, Inti striped on Fab. So now I've told everyone on Facebook that I bought these shoes. And I was actually putting this together. I decided to say, okay, let's link up Fab to Facebook just so I can see how annoying it is and how much I wouldn't use something like this. And I had bought something within about 5 minutes. So the experiment absolutely worked on me. Then again, I don't really like the idea of showing people what I just bought on my newsfeed. So I might go ahead and break that, which I have the option to opt out of. It was actually an option to opt in, which I did. But I can go back and opt out.
They do it right.
Out of it.
I'll give them that. Yeah, an interesting tie-in for Facebook. I'm not sure, other than traffic, what Facebook gets out of it, though. I mean, do they get a cut of any of this stuff since it's an action link? I'm not sure if there's a revenue share.
This kind of ties into Facebook's new App Center. It's the same idea. It's like, we're not creating new apps out of nothing. We're really just pointing you to other places, but you learn to use Facebook as the one-stop place for all the cool stuff in your life.
And to bring it full circle back around to the Google-Facebook conversation, the big loser in this redesign from Fab.com is Google, because Fab swapped out all their Google Plus buttons in favor of Pinterest buttons.
They didn't just add a Pinterest button. They dropped Google Plus and said, no.
They ripped them out.
Yeah, no more Google Plus. Pinterest is where it's at.
Back in April, Pinterest became the number 3 social network behind Facebook and Twitter, and Google Plus is like somewhere number 6 at that point. To drop it, I can see it being a lot cleaner. And also the visual of Pinterest. It seems like it's a lot easier to go, I like that product, But I think this is what Facebook could do with this, is if they can tailor other ads to what other things you bought, like, okay, so Sarah bought the Fuel Band. I like the Fuel Band. I'd like to see that. But if they had an ad for the Jawbone Up or something else similar on the right side, I might end up clicking that thing instead. Because,
or just exercise shoes and things like that.
Things like that. So they look at product categories instead of worrying about, okay, well, yeah, you know what? You guys can use our APIs like crazy. You can have the verbs you want, but we can have the ads on the right side, and we control that money there. So it definitely mimics a lot of real life stuff. I'm like always looking at my friends' T-shirts, like, where'd you get that? I want to know. And so I could see actually paying attention to this much more.
Martin, do you see yourself doing much shopping on Fab?
I certainly do, but I also see a number of other sort of cloning sites come up, which always is a good sign. You know you're onto something really big when there are clones around, and Bamarang, I think, is the latest one in the UK that's sort of like a Fab lookalike, and it's Fab to be loved. But at the same time, these guys have got to move very fast, and I think the tie-in with Facebook is very important to them in terms of getting out ahead of all these copycats who are coming up right behind them.
That's right. That's why they say send in the clones.
Send in the clones.
Let's finish up with the Pirate Bay, which has been fighting a DDoS attack for the past, more than 24 hours now. They're sort of up and down. When last we looked, they were up sometimes and down others, depending on when we reloaded them. What's the latest, Jason? Have you got it? Have you got it up on your screen?
Let's see here. I believe I do. What do you want to search for?
Oh, look at that!
Hey.
So that's the direct link.
This is not. This is
one of the proxy links from the Pirate Party.
Right.
So some of the proxy links are working. Not all the direct links are working. They confirmed on their Facebook page that it is a DDoS. A lot of people jumped to the conclusion that it was Anonymous attacking the Pirate Bay because the Pirate Bay had previously criticized Anonymous for DDoSing Virgin Media over the blocking of the Pirate Bay. And the Pirate Bay has said, we do not encourage these actions. However, on their Facebook page earlier today, they said, just to clarify, we know that it is not Anonymous who is behind the DDoS attack. Stop spreading rumors like that. We may not agree with Anonymous and everything, but we both want the internet to be open and free. So they say they suspect they know who it was, but they're not coming out and saying who it was yet. I think they're too busy trying to fight off the attack.
I'm just waiting for all the conspiracy, blog posts. It's the MPAA. It's this company. It's IAA. We don't know yet. We'll find out.
Anyway, so this has been a much more effective way of stopping people from accessing the Pirate Bay than any of the legal maneuvers that have been done. That probably just adds to the conspiracy theory. Let's take a look at the news fuse. Researchers at Tokyo's Institute of Technology have achieved 3 gigabit per second data speeds wirelessly using the terahertz band. The terahertz band is currently unregulated and is between infrared and microwaves. That top speed is sustainable to around 30 feet, so it could be great for short-range, high-bandwidth things like your home theater, perhaps. The previous record was set in November by chipmaker Rome, but that was a paltry 1.5 gigabit per second.
All right, so I'm going to start a song lyric, and then you guys finish it. Ready?
All right.
You can fool some people sometime, but you...
Yeah, man. Can't fool all the people all the time.
Well, you'd think that was it. It's a different song, though.
Oh.
It sure is hard to fool Redditors.
Redditors?
An elaborate hoax created by students enrolled in the Lying About the Past course at George Mason was debunked by Redditors. We love ya. The hoax revolved around a fake serial killer supported by a number of Wikipedia pages that were fact-based and within Wikipedia's rules. Redditors, though, noticed the timestamps of the articles and the limited number of editors of those pages to unravel the ruse. Yaman.
By now, you've probably all heard about the Kodak company that happened to have a small nuclear facility in its research lab in upstate New York.
What?
If it's news to you, why did they have it? Well, the Physics Buzz blog actually figured it out. They said that Kodak's R&D team would actually check for very small impurities in chemicals because these guys were doing actual research and development way back and using neutron activation analysis, and that was the best way to go. The blog also says that similar facilities, about the size of a refrigerator, it's not that large, can also be found in some university campuses, so don't freak out.
You think Digitimes rumors are funny until you're Samsung and you lose $10 billion of your market capitalization today after a report stated that Apple would obtain memory from Elpida instead of Samsung. SK Hynix, another past Apple DRAM supplier, took a 9% hit as well. Micron is currently in talks to acquire Elpida's business because Elpida is in bankruptcy protection.
Gartner says sales of mobile phones were down 2% worldwide for the quarter. This is the first time the market declined since Q2 of 2009. Gartner says the dip is due to slowing demand in Asia-Pacific as some users are waiting for the next crop of devices. In the quarter, Apple and Samsung were the only two vendors in the top 10 to gain market share and together make up over 49% of all smartphones sold.
Oracle and Google have come up with a roadmap of where their trial could go at the request of the presiding judge. Amongst a number of things, the two sides stipulated that the current jury will no longer work on copyright issues, and no further copyright work will occur until after an appeal or new trial. The case still hinges on Judge Alsop's ruling if APIs are indeed copyrightable.
The Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, you probably know it as ACTA, is under fire from a number of American law professors. In an open letter, the group asked the U.S. Senate Committee on Finance to review ACTA as an Article 2 treaty for Congress to review it as an ex post congressional executive agreement. Any other way, the group says, would be unconstitutional.
Sony's upcoming adaptation of Walter Isaacson's Steve Jobs biography has a screenwriter. Kind of a big name. Yep, it's Aaron Sorkin of Social Network fame. The news comes from Sony directly as a press release. Sony has yet to make any announcements as to who will play Steve Jobs in the film. That's not.
I think it's me. That's why I sort of dressed in black today. Look.
Oh, yeah, that's like
Steve
a
Jobs
black
color.
turtleneck.
Wow.
Me and Ashton Kutcher.
You're up for the same role.
Uncanny.
You heard it here first.
Best of luck, Martin.
And the accent does me down.
Onward into the randomizer.
Randomizer.
Perhaps they can get a Russian android to take the part. Russian researchers, according to Engadget, are building a conceptual mind transfer android. We're not talking about the operating system. This is an actual android that they hope would be able to one day house a computer rig that would be theoretically capable of acting as a personal proxy, essentially a place to upload, quote, human souls. And they're hopefully ready to ship by 2045.
Blink, Android, blink.
No need.
Would you employ one of these to go to work for you? Anybody?
Sure.
I mean, it's a telepresence thing. I kind of get it, but I don't. I mean, uploading your soul, is that something you feel like doing?
It's a little dramatic to say uploading your soul, but just have something that could sort of do your job for you. Why not?
What would I do all day?
Work on your other android.
Okay, so I'll set there we go. I'll have a whole army of androids to figure out what exactly I'm supposed to do all day.
Is this creeping anybody else out, or is it just me?
I just think it's the dead eyes on these things. It's like when you watch CG movies and there's just very little going on behind the eyes. If they just get into some better prosthetics, I think we'll be fine with it.
I just don't see why we have to replicate humans. I mean, I understand that that's like, it's a little weird. Clearly there's something wrong, not blinking. No one's going to be totally confused between the two. But why don't they just look like cool robots? And then they can still do cool stuff.
Because then they can't fill in for you at work.
Yeah.
I think the fact
who's going to know the difference?
It doesn't look like there's much going on behind the eyes means that it could probably fill in for me just fine.
At least you're honest.
Let's look at the calendar.
Windows Mobile Marketplace is shutting down tomorrow. If you might recall, it was originally shutting down on the 9th of May. They extended it 8 days, so officially say your goodbyes because it's over.
For real this time?
Well, unless they extend it again. But
all right.
For all of our sakes, I think it's time to just say goodnight, pull the plug, and move on.
One more email is incoming.
Incoming message.
This from G. Byers out of our chat room says, "Hey, TNT people, I'm from the UK, and I heard that Mike commented on how BT customers have a service called BT Phone. This service is not exclusive to them. They have just partnered with a worldwide company called Phone, F-O-N. The idea behind the device is that if you buy a phone hotspot, then you have access to any other phone hotspots. And since they're a worldwide company, you can have this too. Check out their website at corp.fon.com. So thanks for the tip, G. Byers. I was aware of Phone, but I thought it only worked for the VoIP service. But apparently, like once you have a phone unit up, if you're a phone customer, you can use any of the other Wi-Fi devices. I think the reason it probably gets more attention from BT is because BT has a higher number of customers who have it installed. And so you're likely to come across the hotspots more often than if you're in an area where it's not backed by a major corporation like that.
I think that's right. I've used it a lot in the UK, and it does have a lot of install base there, so I'm sure that's the right explanation.
Yeah, even if you're walking down the street in San Francisco, I'm not sure you're going to find too many.
I haven't seen it here.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks to everybody who submits on our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. It is the place to let us know what stories you'd like us to cover. We take a look not only at what's submitted, helps tip us off to hot news stories, but also how many votes up or down the stories get, and that helps us decide what to cover each and every day. So get in there and join the 6,000 plus people at technewstoday.reddit.com. Martin, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us again today. And let folks know
Thank you for having me.
Where they can find your work on The Economist as well as the Babbage podcast.
That's right. It's at economist.com. And as you said, The Babbage is a weekly podcast, and you'll generally find me anchoring that with Tom Standage, my colleague.
Martin always slips in the cleverest puns. That's
occasionally.
That's come for the puns, stay for the tech analysis. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching or listening. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Our email address is tnt@twit.tv. You can find us live, if you're not watching live, every day at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern at live.twit.tv. And, of course, you can find us every day on demand at twit.tv/TNT. I'll be off tomorrow, but Ina Fried from All Things D will be with us. They'll see you then.